Sports are unpredictable. No matter what your Uncle Joe says, no one can reliably predict how a game will end. In sports, success and failure can always be just one wrong movement apart. Giants can stumble and underdogs can prevail. That's why people love sports. But things change when you introduce money into the equation, because money helps winners stay winners. Whoever is on top gets the most cash. Prize money, sponsorships, ticket sales, merchandise. You're always gonna profit more from those things when you're successful. Who's gonna buy a season ticket for a team that constantly loses? So winners make more money, and by investing that money in better players, better coaches, better scouts, and one of those sweet t-shirt cannons, they create better chances for themselves for the next season. This might not be such a big thing for individual sports, but for teams, this leads to a system with a few top dogs who make all the money and an army of losers who can only dream of the championship. Leaving out other factors like geography, fan loyalty, and Russian oligarchs, the best teams can afford the best players, and the others get the leftovers. This in turn makes it even harder for losing teams to sign good players, minimizing their chances of winning. So in the end, you're left with a handful of teams who dominate everything, and then there's everybody else. Whether the system is fair or not, it's obviously great for those top teams making bank, but for the league itself? Not so much. Because you're not gonna be excited about a championship where the same team wins every season. If fans lose interest, that means less money from broadcasting rights, sponsors, ticket sales, and merchandise for the whole league. So all the love for the game and such aside, sports like football are still a business, and predictability ruins them. The NFL's answer to this problem? The draft. Every year around the end of April or beginning of May, representatives of all NFL teams come together for 3 days to sign the best college football players. But instead of the one screaming the loudest going first, the order in which teams can choose their players depends on how they did last season. This is the decisive factor that gives weak teams a chance to catch up by claiming the best players for themselves, thereby evening out the player value among NFL teams. The draft order is established anew every year by looking at how well teams performed the previous season. First is the team with the worst winning percentage that didn't get into the playoffs, then the second worst, and so on until the playoff teams. Those get ordered by how far they advance, and then the winning percentage all the way up to the last team, the reigning Super Bowl champions. So the worst team gets to choose first, ideally getting the best player, and the best team goes last. This order of player picks is repeated in 7 rounds, so every team can choose at least 7 new players. Before we go on, it might be important to note that drafted players aren't automatically signed to the team that picked them. First they have to negotiate a contract with each other, which isn't that hard considering that the drafted player only has the options of either taking the offer, getting traded to another team, or play Madden while waiting for the season to be over. Until now, pretty simple stuff, right? Well, we're not done yet. Let's talk about trades. The draft order determines when a team gets a pick, but if it doesn't need that pick, it is able to trade it with another team. For example, Team Blue can trade in their first round pick for the picks for round 3 and 4 of Team Green. Team Green gains 1 early pick and Team Blue gains 2 later picks. Trades help everyone to get what they want. If a team is in need of many but unexceptional players, it can trade 1 early round pick for multiple later round picks to get more players. If they have multiple picks they don't absolutely need but want 1 really good player, they can trade many late picks for 1 early pick. This sounds simple enough, but trades are often much more complicated, with additional clauses to trade picks in later years, trade already signed players, or pay money to even out the trade. Another thing that comes into play at the end of rounds 3 till 7 are compensatory picks. These are a maximum of 32 picks that can be assigned to teams that have lost players to other teams. But this only applies to players who are transferred from one team to another, not those players that prove so bad that teams just drop them altogether. From the value that a team loses by handing off players is subtracted the value of the players gained. This decides the number of compensatory picks a team gets, 4 picks max, and in which round these picks are due. Luckily, this is done by a certain formula that the NFL won't reveal, so I don't have to explain it to you. But basically it works like this. If you lose a lot of valuable players, you're getting more early compensatory picks. If you lose only 1 or 2 mediocre players, you'll get 1 or 2 later picks. And if you gain more players than you lose, you get no compensatory picks at all. After 3 days, when the draft finally is over and the dust has settled, it's time for some more drafting. If players became eligible for the draft after the draft was already done, they can get into the supplemental draft, which teams can, but don't have to participate in. In the supplemental draft, things work a little differently. Teams blindly choose a fictional round in which they would like to pick a player, and if nobody else wants him, they'll get the player and have to give up their pick in the chosen round in next year's draft. If somebody else wants that player too, the team with the earlier pick gets him. If 2 teams pick the same player in the same round, the team with the worst last season record gets him. If all that drafting is done for good and a player didn't get his shot at glory, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Because after the draft, the player becomes a so-called unrestricted free agent, which means that he can be signed by any team right away. And if he gets multiple offers, in contrast to drafted players, he can actually choose for which team he wants to play. So this is the NFL Draft, a system that gives weaker teams the chance to get better players, leading to a more balanced league, more money for the franchises, and better games for all of us.